This is Voyager Notes, a transmission from 25 billion kilometers, still transmitting. On the 23rd of September 1999, Mars Climate Orbiter crossed behind the planet it had traveled 656 million kilometers to reach, and the signal never came back out the other side. The spacecraft had been in transit for 286 days. The team at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory had watched it cross the inner solar system through spring and summer, making course corrections, trimming its trajectory. Everything in the telemetry looked close to nominal. The approach sequence began on schedule, and then the probe went behind Mars, and the signal stopped, and that was the end of it. For roughly 22 minutes during what should have been orbital insertion, the team waited. The spacecraft was designed to pass behind the planet, perform its main engine burn, and re-emerge on the far side already in a stable orbit. Reacquisition of signal was expected at a precise time. That time came and went. The team called the period after that window a loss of signal. It stayed that way. Mars Climate Orbiter had launched on the 11th of December 1998, riding a Delta II rocket from Cape Canaveral. Its mission was specific and practical. It was designed to serve as a relay for the Mars Polar Lander, which was following behind it, and to study the Martian climate over a full Martian year, mapping weather patterns, monitoring dust storms, tracking the seasonal exchange of carbon dioxide between atmosphere and polar ice. The spacecraft cost $327 million. It carried instruments designed to last years in orbit. The trajectory team had been tracking its course since launch. Over the course of the cruise phase, small velocity corrections were executed, adjusting the spacecraft's path through a series of maneuvers called TCMs, trajectory correction maneuvers. Navigation relied on two streams of data: the onboard accelerometers measuring small forces on the spacecraft, and the Doppler tracking from the Deep Space Network antennas on the ground. The numbers from both streams were fed into models that predicted where the probe would arrive and at what angle. One of those streams had a problem that nobody caught in time. Lockheed Martin's spacecraft team had written software that reported small force measurements in pound-force seconds, the imperial unit. The navigation software at JPL expected those values in Newton seconds, the metric unit. A pound-force second is approximately 4.45 Newton seconds. The discrepancy between the two is not trivial. Applied across weeks and months of flight, the error accumulated in the spacecraft's trajectory, bending its path almost imperceptibly away from where the models said it should be. The probe was heading slightly lower than planned, and the difference only became critical at the moment of Mars orbital insertion. Loop hash 1, planted here, the Mishap Investigation Board would later identify this mismatch as the proximate cause, but the question of how a mismatch of this kind survives months of review is harder to close. The navigation team had, in fact, seen anomalies. Over the cruise phase, small residuals appeared between the predicted and actual trajectory. The spacecraft was not exactly where it should be. These residuals were noted and investigated, but the conclusion at the time was that they fell within acceptable margins, or that the cause was something like angular momentum desaturation, a routine process of venting stored rotational energy that produces a small force on the spacecraft. The desaturation events were logged. The force data from those events was the very data encoded in the wrong units. The investigation would show that the residuals were not random noise. They were the accumulating signature of the unit mismatch, there in the data the entire time, unrecognized. The Mishap Investigation Board published its findings after the loss. The board identified the unit conversion failure as the root cause, But it also documented a deeper failure. A set of processes for cross-checking navigation data that should have caught the discrepancy did not function as intended. The software interface document specified metric units. The Lockheed Martin code used imperial units. That gap was never verified at the interface level during the mission. The board's report used the phrase failure to use metric units as the cause, but the more complete picture was a chain, each link of which was ordinary and unalarming on its own until it wasn't. The spacecraft descended too deep into the Martian atmosphere during the burn. The design called for an orbital insertion at an altitude of approximately 150 kilometers above the surface. The actual approach brought it to a trajectory far below that. At too low an altitude, aerodynamic forces on the spacecraft at that velocity would have been catastrophic. The probe almost certainly broke apart or burned. No debris was ever recovered. No signal was ever received again. Loop hash 2 planted here. The Mars Polar Lander, the spacecraft Mars Climate Orbiter was meant to relay data for, was still en route behind it. Its fate would be decided 3 months later. The silence that followed the loss of signal window was not dramatic in the way silence in a film is dramatic. It was procedural. Controllers confirmed the loss. The team began logging the event. Investigation teams were stood up. The spacecraft was gone. But the work of understanding what happened had already started. What that investigation found when it reached the Lockheed Martin software was a number that had been wrong from launch day. Every force measurement reported by the attitude control system during the cruise phase had been in pound force seconds. Every one of those values had been fed into the navigation models expecting Newton seconds. The number 4.45, the approximate ratio between the two units, does not appear anywhere in the mission record as an acknowledged correction. It accumulated instead invisibly across 286 days. The scale of what that number cost is difficult to render. The spacecraft itself, the years of engineering work, the instruments, the planned climate record, the relay capability for a follow-on lander already in flight, none of it recoverable. The Mishap Investigation Board's 1999 report put the unit Mismatch at the center of its findings and noted that existing verification procedures had not been followed. The chain of accountability ran through multiple teams and multiple review checkpoints, none of which had flagged the mismatch before it was too late. The Mars Climate Orbiter's loss had immediate consequences for the mission it was supposed to support. The Mars Polar Lander was still traveling toward Mars when the orbiter was lost. The relay capability it would have provided was gone. The Polar Lander attempted its own direct entry landing on the 3rd of December 1999, transmitting through its own antenna. It was never heard from again. No cause was ever confirmed. The two losses within months of each other prompted a broad review of NASA's faster, better, cheaper program management approach, which had compressed timelines and reduced redundancies in the name of cost efficiency. Mars Climate Orbiter itself was never found. Mars has no surface feature bearing its name, no wreckage image from an orbital camera. The Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter, which later imaged Beagle 2's remains on the surface, has no confirmed image of debris attributable to the climate orbiter. The spacecraft's fate after it passed behind the planet is inferred from the orbital mechanics and the unit mismatch, not from any physical recovery. It entered too deep, and that's where the record ends. The $327 million figure was cited repeatedly in the coverage that followed. It was the kind of number that made the story comprehensible to an audience that had no way to picture the spacecraft itself, its instruments, its planned orbit, the years of trajectory corrections that had looked until the final minutes, like they might hold. The Mishap Investigation Board's 1999 findings reshaped how NASA and its contractors verify software interfaces. Unit checking protocols became a standard review item on subsequent missions. The report is still cited in aerospace systems engineering courses as a case study in how process gaps, none of which seems catastrophic on its own, can accumulate to a total loss. The Climate Orbiter's instruments, had it reached orbit, would have returned data on Martian dust, water vapor, and surface energy balance across a full Martian year. That data set was never collected. The climate record Mars scientists were waiting for from this specific spacecraft still has no equivalent from the late 1990s observation window. Other missions have since studied Martian climate, but the gap that opened on the 23rd of September 1999 cannot be filled retroactively. The unit mismatch that ended the mission was not discovered during the cruise phase, though the navigation residuals were there in the data, available to be read. Whether a different review process would have caught it, whether a slightly different staffing structure or a slightly different interface document would have changed the outcome, the investigation board could document what failed but couldn't answer what would have saved it. The record shows what happened. It doesn't show the version of the mission that worked, the spacecraft that never reached orbit, the relay that never relayed, the climate record that was never made, the signal that went behind a planet on the 23rd of September 1999 and still hasn't come back. The signal went behind Mars on the 23rd of September 1999 and never returned. Which part of the record stays with you?
This was Voyager Notes. The signal is still coming back.